Recap in minutes. In today's video, we will be going through an action war movie named Behind Enemy Lines. There will be spoilers ahead, so chill out and enjoy. The movie begins with shots of the soldiers planning in a garden, showing the signs of peace and ceasefire in Bosnia, which was announced in the Cincinnati Accord. The NATO troops were also planning to withdraw from the country after this accord. In the next scene, we see a U.S. aircraft carrier, Carl Vinson, on the surface of the Adriatic Sea. The troops on the carrier were alert to respond to any kind of attack. At this moment we see two pilots getting instructions from the engineers and control room to fly their next flight. They were just getting their jet ready to fly when they suddenly ordered to abort takeoff. They were actually stopped from flying for the second time that day. Both of the pilots, Chris Burnett and Jeremy Stackhouse, start talking about the wealth of Bill Gates. Chris debates how they could be flying jets for Bill since he has got more wealth than Peru. When they see some of their fellows and engineers having recess time playing rugby, they join them after coming out of their jet. Chris makes the game more interesting by asking them to use the catapult to throw the ball higher. He also bets with one of his engineers $20 on catching that ball. After the catapult throw, Chris goes after the ball, but he could not win the bet because the ball fell into the water. In the next scene, a Black Hawk comes on board the aircraft carrier. Commander of NATO Naval Command Admiral Juan Miguel Paquet meets the commander of the Adriatic Battle Group, Admiral Leslie Riegard. He reviews some papers and the consort of Admiral Leslie Riegard. He asks him why his pilots are flying beyond the limits in time, and he assures him to follow the orders next time. Admiral Juan reminds him that the treaty is fragile, so act cautiously. Riegard assures him that they'll follow the flight route strictly. Then Admiral Paquet hands over the card of a journalist and asks him to be nice to this guy and show him the carrier. He gets annoyed, but he has to follow the orders. The scene shifts, and we see Chris and Jeremy in the cafeteria. There they get a surprise visit from Marine Captain Glenn Rodway. He talks about his missions as a Marine and his duties. He asks them to be prepared because there might be a mission at hand. He replied to Glenn that he is ready to fight and wants action. In the meanwhile, Jeremy points to a push-up contest of his associates that was going on behind Chris. At this moment a soldier calls the name of Chris Burnett to take him to meet the Admiral. On the way, he started talking to the messenger soldier Master Chief Tom O'Malley about why the Admiral wanted to meet him, which he said he did not know. Eventually, they come to the room of the Admiral. The Admiral says that he has his letter that he wants to leave the Navy. He asks him the reason, and Chris tells him that he wants to move on. There they had some arguments over the potential and misconduct of his career. Chris says that he is tired of a cop-like routine to guard the airspace. He said he wanted to be a fighter pilot, not a cop. The Admiral says they're at war, but Chris argues on the differences between his current routine and a watchman. The Admiral gets annoyed at his attitude. He tells him that after 2 weeks, he will accept his resignation. He then asks him to dismiss. At the door, Jeremy was waiting for Chris. He came there after hearing the news from O'Malley. He asks Chris if it was true that he wanted to quit the job. He told him that that is true and moved along the hallway. In the next scene, the crew members of the kitchen were preparing the tables to welcome Christmas. Chris calls his dad, says Merry Christmas, and tells him how he is missing them. After he hangs up the call, he sees his and Jeremy's name on the planner for a special mission to take photos in the enemy's fly zone. Chris curses them for putting them on the holiday mission, while Jeremy thrills that at least they will fly. After some time, they were getting ready in their jet to fly for the NATO solo photo reconnaissance mission. In the next moment, they were in the skies with their jet. They were talking about their useless joy rides and comparing this one with those. In the meanwhile, Chris points out some activity on his radar screen that Jeremy ignores, saying that it is a demilitarized zone. Chris asks him again to see that place with their new camera on the jet. They turn to that specific zone and record the settlement and movements of some insurgents on their camera films. They saw them nearby the forest, and one of them alerted their leader. The leader gave them the orders to get the jet down immediately. The militia group goes on high alert and they target the jet with SAM missiles. They report to the base that they have been engaged, so they put out decoy flares. They have a hard time tracking and struggling to get away from the first missile. In the same moment the militia fires another SAM missile. They started to escape the missiles in the skies. They dropped their gas tanks to evade them and sped up, but the last one crashed their right tail. The missile fired shrapnel and blew the jet instantly. Both the pilots survived the initial explosion, then they ejected safely. They land in a forest near a war-torn statue. While there was a Christmas party going on at the aircraft carrier, Riegard was alerted of the crash, so he made his way to the control room where he was briefed about the crash. He orders his men to contact NATO and tell Paquet as well. On the other side, the pilot Chris sees Jeremy injured. Both of the pilots don't know if the enemy has seen them eject. In the middle of the conversation, Chris tries to send out a distress signal, but Jeremy says he needs higher ground for the signal to work. Chris goes for higher ground, leaving Jeremy there. Now the militia found those scrapped parts of the crashed jet, and they were enjoying their victory firing in the air. General Miroslav comes there in the jeep while talking to someone about how he was forced to shoot down the jet. He was saying that they violated airspace rules and they saw his troops mobilizing, so he had to fire down the jet. After that, he orders to take every part of the jet to Granic and that no one else touches it. Jeremy was laying on the ground and a large Serbian army came there searching for them. They were complete with tanks, jeeps, men, and guns. They all surround him and stare at him. Then their general arrives there while Chris is helpless to watch. When the general makes sure that he is alone and doing a reconnaissance mission, he asks Sasha something, and everyone leaves. Sasha lights up his cigarette and stands Jeremy up and shoots him from behind. Chris shouts, which he hears and tells the other troops, and they open fire on Chris. General Miroslav sends both Sasha and Colonel Viktor Bazda to go after him. Chris luckily reaches a high point and sends a radio message to the control room where Riegard and his men respond. Chris confirms to them that the Serb military men shot Jeremy in the head. Admiral tells him the coordinates of the rally point, where they'll pick up him. The Admiral asks for a green light from his fellow admirals to get his pilot back to the carrier. In the next scene, Chris was running to reach the rally point while the Serbian military was on his tail. The NATO Admiral Paquette reaches the carrier, and questions what was going on there. Admiral Riegard tells him that they are preparing for a search and rescue operation. Paquette wants him to stand down and call it off immediately. He says that the Serbian resistance is trying to stir up the whole peace process of the Cincinnati Accord, and that the recon mission was way out of line. Riegard says the pilot Chris has informed them about the killing of Jeremy at the hands of the Serbian army. Paquette does not pay heed to him and orders him to stop the rescue operation immediately. He said they will rescue Chris when he will be in the safe zones. Sometime later. When Chris was catching his breath, Sasha opened fire at him. He keeps firing and soon he slides down to a spot out of sight. Chris escapes and reaches the rendezvous point eventually. There he connects to the control room and radios Riegard that he is at the rendezvous point. Admiral Riegard asks Chris to use his training and learnings to survive and reach the new safe point. At the same moment, the Serbian military arrive there. Chris runs from there without getting into sight. Riegard uses drastic measures to locate Chris specifically in the secret satellite navigation room. They use satellite imagery to track him. They see him running from a battalion, but he trips down a ditch of mud which turns out to be the ditch that was filled with discarded bodies. That ditch has rotting bodies of the Muslims of Serbia that the paramilitary has executed. The Serb army men try to stab him out of the ground, but he eventually escapes and crawls out. The Admiral orders to find intel on who's attacking Chris. The next day, there was news of the Super Hornet plane missing on the Sky News. Chris's father was informed about this incident and that the jet had been shot down in Bosnia. While General Miroslav was furious that Chris was not terminated yet. He went to the hidden quarter of Granic to inspect the scrapped parts of the Super Hornet. He asked his mechanical engineer about the hard drive of the camera. He tells the general that the photos taken are stored somewhere on the plane digitally, so the photos might have been destroyed with the jet. Miroslav wants confirmation on that, so he orders him to keep scrapping and searching. Back on the carrier, in Riegard's quarters, Admiral Paquette visits him and complains about his behavior of telling the news reporter about the incident. He said that he stabbed him in the back and says this might damage the peace process. Paquette emphasizes this might restart the fighting and that this might do more harm than good. On the other side, Chris was running through some abandoned facility. He spots an old man and two kids. He sees them jumping over some tripwire that could lead him to death. Some soldier sees him and walks to fire at him, but they step on one of the wires, causing catastrophic blows of the tripped bombs. When he comes to his senses, he sees Sasha coming to the abandoned building. Chris escapes into the woods and then sends signals to the control room. He tells the Admiral that he's near the safe zone. He asks for the next directions and the Admiral orders him to march east to the sweet spot. He confirms that he will be there to pick him up. Chris starts running for that safe sweet spot. Helicopters are being prepared for the rescue mission. When they were briefing about the pickup strategy, Paquette with his men interrupts that meeting and says Colonel Brigand will conduct the pickup operation. On the other side, Chris was running on a bridge to escape Sasha. He sees a truck and comes in front of it to ask for a lift. They don't even speak his language. They luckily accept his request for the lift and he jumps in the back of the truck. Chris had a chit-chat with them and liked their music interests. Sasha comes to the roadside where he got the lift and calls his men to follow him in the hatch town. After some time there is a scene of a chopper with French special NATO forces to rescue Chris. They're in the town. Chris's truck was attacked when it was going through a really horrid war zone. They took refuge in a fortified room where a man interrogates him if he was there to bomb the place, but Chris tells me that he was only there to take photos. The man tells him that General Miroslav Lokar will be coming here to kill everyone. Meanwhile, General Lokar's tank blows up the building and enters. The soldiers start to search this place, then they execute the remaining civilians. They later find a dead body with a radio set that looks to be Chris's body to them. They took his body to the General Lokar. Sasha told them it was not him inspecting his tattoo. General got disappointed and furious when he found that he switched his uniform and ran away. Colonel Victor tells General Lokar that Chris might have already radioed his American troops, so they don't have much time. Sometime later we see Chris leaving the insurgency place wearing their troop uniform. He met that same man Ice on his way to escape. When Chris and that boy Ice were running towards the helicopter, Admiral Regart receives a phone call informing him of the death of pilot Chris. Here they were watching the Sky News breaking the news of the death of the pilot. And there Chris was running towards the sweet spot along with his friend Ice. When they were about to reach the marked spot, the helicopter crew received the orders to abort the mission. They were told that the package was not in the position and the mission was scrubbed. Churs yells at the chopper in deep frustration as he watches them going away. When they were sitting there in despair at the fields, Ice Cube points out to an angel statue where Chris remembers that's where his ejector seat landed. Chris tells him his last plan is to take the hard drive from the ejector seat. Meanwhile, the Serbian army was preparing to wrap things up. General Lokar orders Sasha to kill the second American and get the body back to him. They find discarded AK mag in the field, so they get clues about Chris's whereabouts. After some time, Chris made his way to the snowy statue. He found the seat and tried to turn on the signals, but the battery was off. He tries to turn it on, and with trial and error, he succeeds in turning the tracking beacon on. On the other side, at the aircraft carrier, Admiral Regard is requested to be in the navigation room. The team informed the Admiral that homie beacon had been reactivated manually for 7 minutes. The Admiral thinks it's Chris, but the others were suspecting it was a setup. Tom advises him to get advice from the command first, but the Admiral says, this is finally their chance to rescue Chris. In the forest, we see Sasha and Victor trekking through a minefield, and Colonel Victor steps on one. Sasha holds him at gunpoint while he begs Sasha to help him, but he abandons him. At the same moment, Chris opens the hard drive cover with an army knife and he hears an explosion nearby. Probably the colonel has blown himself up. Back at the carrier, the Admiral saddles up his team and boards on a chopper to get Chris back. The Serbian army also picks up the ejector seat signals and comes out after that. 3 Blackhawks are seen leaving the carrier. It's the Admiral and his rescue team. In the next moment, Sasha arrives at that ejection seat point and prepares his sniper rifle to take his shot, but suddenly hears helicopters approaching, so he backs off for a moment and repositions himself. He approaches the seat slowly. Chris erupts from below and opens fire at him with a pistol. Now the Serbian coalition comes out of the forest. Chris runs for his life, and when he was cornered, the Admiral and his men show up. He runs back to get the hard drive with the photos of the civilian massacre. The rescue team provides cover. After getting the disc, Chris runs back for the rescue and they catch him. Chris is welcomed by the Admiral and Captain Rodway. He hands over the hard drive and says that's the reason they executed Jeremy. Chris asks for his resignation letter back. The movie ends when they come back to the aircraft carrier where they're welcomed with celebrations. Chris stays in the Navy. General Lokar was found guilty of war crimes and Riegart lost his command position. The movie ends here showing Admiral Riegart walking along his aircraft carrier. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this and to help the channel grow.